Aleister Crowley has always appealed to me because he stands out among all the great mystics of the world in being the most egregious case. There are some pretty weird mystics in all traditions, and some that look like they were part-time crazy, but there's nobody quite compares to Crowley.
Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Hilaritas podcast. I am your host, Mike Gathers. Join me here as we explore the vast world of iconic writer, psychedelic psychologist, rebel philosopher, and self-proclaimed agnostic mystic, Robert Anton Wilson. Visit us at hilaritaspress.com/podcast for show notes, links, and past episodes. With the recent Hilaritas Press release of Lion of Light, Robert Anton Wilson on Aleister Crowley, it's my great pleasure to chat with the man who wrote the introduction to said book, musician, teacher, and author of over 20 books on Aleister Crowley, Magick, Kabbala, the Thoth Tarot, and things that go bump in the night, Lon Milo DuQuette. Lon Milo DuQuette, it's a pleasure to have you on the Hilaritas podcast.
It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, we at Hilaritas just put together a book on Robert Anton Wilson and Aleister Crowley, Lion of Light, and I reached out to you and Richard Kaczynski to whip something up for us, and you both really delivered delightful little essays there. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. It's a beautiful, beautiful book.
Yeah, thank you. So in 1980, go ahead.
Here, if we're looking at it.
Yeah, you got your own copy. Great. So in 1989, you gave Bob an Adam Weishaupt Award, which said, because of his inspiring novels and astonishing research, Mr. Wilson is directly responsible for raising the consciousness of our planet and of other worlds beyond our realm. Love that. Anything you want to say? I mean, you mentioned how much of an influence Bob Wilson has been on the occult, I guess you would say.
He's been an influence on everything.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know where to begin. I guess it was back in 1981.
Mm-hmm.
I met Bob for the first time, but I'd been a real fan of the whole Discordian Principia Discordia and the Discordian movement prior to that, and so had a lot of others who would be in my sort of circle of friends as we were sort of getting the Ordo Templi Orientis kind of off the ground, and it was in 1980, I guess, that we had given our lodge in Costa Mesa, California, or Newport Beach, thought it would be nice to have our Guild of Advanced Thought. We had a guild within the lodge that was just sort of Tim Leary fans and things like that. We thought it'd be great to give an award, an Adam Weishaupt Illuminati Award to Timothy Leary. And one of our members was working with Peace Press at the time, which was publishing Leary's stuff. And we arranged and asked through the publisher if it'd be okay if we gave him an award, and he was speaking at a little club, McCabe Music in Santa Monica. We said we're going to give him this award on that night, and we had a like a walnut plaque with brass on the laser. Let's see. I don't know if you can see it. That was sort of, and when we gave it to Bob a couple of years later, it was that same pattern with the goddess Nui there and
Perfect.
OTO. And it was fun. There's pictures and everything. And it sort of was a controversial move even within the OTO. They said, "Oh, what are you doing? This is, I said, it's Tim Leary, he's a modern saint, for Christ's sake." And but anyway, it was really fun. And when I met Bob in person, it was in Carmichael, California, which is Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
And he was scheduled to speak at a thing called an infrasion. And Bob Wilson was scheduled to speak, and Kenneth Anger, the filmmaker, had a film festival really in town also. And Grady McMurtry, Hymenaeus Alpha 777, the head of the OTO, also spoke. And I don't know what I did or what my excuse was for being there, but we all stayed at this big house in Carmichael, and we all sort of met around the dining room table. There's Kenneth Anger and Bob Wilson and Grady McMurtry. And when I was introduced to Bob, he says, "Oh, you're the guy that gave Tim Leary the award." And I said, "Yes, and you're going to get the next one."
That was perfect. Very snappy response.
Not knowing what the hell anything was. So we ended up eventually giving him that award a few years later. I guess it was in 1989. I guess by the time we gave him the award at a Masonic lodge, I think, also in Santa Monica. And so we'd kept in touch, and every year we both presented at a thing called Pantheacon. And Pantheacon is probably certainly the largest indoor pagan gathering. And it went for like 23 years straight, up in first in San Francisco and then in San Jose. And Bob lived nearby, or near enough by where he didn't have to actually stay all night at the hotel. And I was always running around and too busy to do anything but sleep in the hotel room. So Glenn Turner, the organizer of the event, would always book Bob and me in the same room year after year. So it was like our green room.
Right, the prep.
Yeah. So we had a chance over the years, and of course I couldn't resist the opportunity to catch him up on all the stuff, because he and I by that time were sharing a publisher. The people at New Falcon was publishing us both, and so we had a lot to talk about. And I remember one year I had my manuscript for the Chicken Kabbala book, the Chicken Kabbala, which is, believe it or not, like a funny introduction. I made up this rabbi, and it was just, the whole thing's a hoax kind of thing. But it was good Kabbalah too. It's sort of like a sweet coating to the bitter Kabbalah pill.
Gotcha.
And that year, by then Bob was in a wheelchair. And so I had like a captive audience. He couldn't even roll into the bathroom. And I read pretty much the whole damn thing. Whole damn thing to him. But anyway, he was a dear soul. And I guess when his wife Arlen died, in 1999, I think.
Right.
We were all heartbroken, because they were sort of like the sentimental power couple.
Real lovebirds, though, huh?
Yeah. And so shortly after that, we both spoke at a bookstore in Riverside, California. And to cheer him up, I was speaking first to introduce him. And when in my introductory words, I talked about nothing but me, and how much Bob liked me, and how much I impressed Bob. how much, even though we didn't know each other very well, I had this profound effect upon his life,
Big influence.
Yeah. And it cheered him up, okay, because he was feeling pretty down. And so anyway, that's it. Bob was kind enough to write an introduction to a couple of the things I did with Christopher Hyatt, and perhaps the most dramatic was the one he wrote for our book, Taboo. What is the Sex, Religion, and Magic? And he said it was lewd, obscene, blasphemous, subversive, and very interesting.
Everything you could want.
And all right-thinking people will agree that it should be banned, bowdlerized, censored, suppressed, and burned by the public hangman.
That's a profound endorsement.
That's
you hit all the bases.
Yeah, here I am having Bob Wilson talk about Lon. So,
I've read your stuff years and years ago, and sampling it here and there. You have a particular view, in my opinion, on Western magic that really resonates with me, and that I've always kind of got this sense that I'm supposed to be imposing my will upon the world in a way. But when I listen to you and read you, you talk more about like, well, what does this magical operation say about me? And almost like using these, the Goetia and the Enochian systems as ways to anthropomorphize human consciousness, like our own consciousness, maybe the collective consciousness, and then let these dramas play out. And this is my story, but standing back and looking at it and like, okay, what's the message here for me? And I just love the way you really turn that around. I think that's a very important way to approach things.
Well, ultimately, that's what everybody has to do. And it's just, when are you gonna admit it? And there's a phony controversy. There's a phony argument between those that view magic and magical beings and angels and demons and spirits and things like that as having an objective reality, and those that say it's all psychological, it's all subjective. And it's no argument at all, because it's got to be both. It's got to be both. Okay. And the idea that absolutely every impression we have that we think is objective is being processed subjectively. So in other words, and the Kabbalists, from time immemorial, have been trying to demonstrate what the mechanism that makes that possible is. And they have this idea of taking the axiom that we're made in the image of deity, or in other words, we're the reflection of deity. Mm-hmm. It's only one step away from saying everything is the reflection of deity. We're just one that's a bit more organized with complexity. But everything that you and me it seems like we're talking to each other here on our respective computer screens, but we're not. You're in me. You're a spirit. You're a spirit that's in me, and it seems like you have independent existence in yours, and of course you do, all within me. Okay. And it's just like saying when I go into the bathroom and look at myself in the mirror, yeah, that's my reflection. That's not real. That's just my reflection. But I give it life. It lives because of me too. So when you're hearing these words, you're just talking to yourself. When you hear my words, you're talking to yourself through this vehicle here. And the things that the Kabbalists have been trying to explain from day one is, if we peel away all the consciousness levels that we really aren't, it'd be like waking up like an onion, peeling layer, and each level is a higher level of frequency of consciousness. Okay. And I know the word woke has such a
little stigma these days.
Why would that be a bad word, for Christ's sake? Right. But at each level of waking up, we realize more and more that we're each other. Okay? And the idea that the ultimate wake up is that we realize we've all been each other all along. Okay, that's the big singularity, smooth point of consciousness. And so from that point of view, magic, the techniques of magic work sometimes like a well-oiled machine, because we momentarily buy into the objectivity of the spirits. As a matter of fact, to do it properly, you do buy into it. Okay, of course, you can't, it's hard to reach inside and perform surgery on your internal processes, but you can project it outside of yourself and work with it out there. And that's sort of the basic difference between the general view of Eastern mysticism and Western mysticism. Eastern mysticism is pretty damn comfortable with going inside and stripping away all the things you're not until you find out, the core of what really is you. And they're pretty comfortable with that. And I don't want to sound, chauvinistic or anything, but it's just like the Eastern way is more comfortable if you're just generally, to start with, hardwired a little better to do things inwardly, subjectively. And in the West, because I don't know, cultural programming or something over the years, or the fact that we've just been bullied into viewing God as being something outside of yourself, that our techniques of tricking ourselves into waking up, we're more comfortable projecting them outward. Okay, we love praying to something else. We love priestcrafts, and we love strutting around in robes and lighting candles and doing things. It's sort of the Western way.
Wow. Okay, that really clarified some things for me. And it's my story that Western culture is what we might call more heady, more conceptual, more abstract, and that would lead to more of a projection type experience, more of a left brain abstraction kind of experience. I've never quite put it together, East versus West, in those terms, but that's lovely. Wow. You mentioned at one point, I'm the one that gives it life. And that to me reminded me of something Bob might say, who's the master that makes the grass green?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you talk about the Kabbala and these layers, and I have come to see you as sort of an expert on the Thoth Tarot. When Crowley went and met, I believe if I have my timeline right, Crowley went and visited Bennett in Ceylon, and they discussed a language of consciousness, and that I think they decided at that time that Kabbala was their language. And then he went on to write Liber 777 with all the correspondences. But it seems like the Thoth Tarot was kind of his end product, Crowley's end product in that kind of exploration of the symbolism and language of consciousness. Would you agree with that, or is that?
I would agree with that. It was his magnum opus, and he had to be drugged or dragged Who knows?
Mm.
Kicking and screaming into the project because he had met Frieda Harris pretty late in life. Well, he met her in the 30s. But she more or less, she was this avant-garde kind of new woman, married to this very liberal Labor Party. He was the whip. He knew where all the skeletons were. But anyway, he's a powerful guy. And she was this hair bobbed, almost flapper beatnik kind of wife. And she told Crowley, "Look, you know everything about everything, And she was a Rudolf Steiner kind of theosophical gal to begin with, but you know everything about everything, and you're getting old and you're going to die soon. What are you doing with your life? You're at a party. What are you doing? What you need to do is write a book where you put it all together. You wrote all these other books when you're at different stages of your youth. You disagree with half of it already. Why don't you just put it all together in one big book?" And he said, "No, I can't. I don't want to do that." That's hard. I wrote lots of books, but it's Harris that talks him into it. Okay, and she's already an established sort of avant-garde, cubist-y kind of artist already in her own right. She did all of the Masonic trestle board. They're wild, psychedelic-y Masonic trestle boards for the 3 degrees that are still in the hallways of lots of Masonic lodges that I visit today. She finally says, "Look, organize your book where you tell everybody everything about everything, and organize it along the lines of the 78 cards of the tarot, Kabbalistically." Okay, and Crowley's putting all of this to, yeah, that was how I would have to do it. And she says, "And I'll paint it. I'll give you a full-size watercolor painting for every one of those cards. Not only that, I'll pay you. I'll pay you a little money, to do that." And Crowley says, "Oh, I can't take money for that." And she says, "Well, look, I'll pay you to give me magic lessons, and that's how we'll cover your problem with the payment." So that's how that happened. And Crowley did write the book that attempts to tell everything, absolutely everything about absolutely everything. And she painted the cards, but she didn't know that he would have to approve each one of the cards. She had to repaint. She had to redo all of them from initial conceptual things. And some of them she had to do full paintings of 3 or 4 different versions of, and he would have to paint them, choose the one. And all of this going on during the war. This going on with the blitzes and the bombings and the troop trains and all of the romantic merchant ivory, British stiff upper lip stay calm, carry on.
Makes me wonder what kind of impact that had on the project.
I think it, as far as it contributing a factor of the force and fire and war and fiery violence that is the opening act of every aeon change, especially this one. I think it had a profound background meditation, if nothing else, for the whole project. And the Thoth Tarot has become, in a way, Crowley's true magnum opus. In the Book of Thoth, his true magnum opus, and a worthy cherry on top of a wild life. So when Grady McMurtry finally, when he learned that Carl Germer, who inherited the OTO after Crowley died, and Carl Germer refused to initiate anymore. He didn't want the OTO to be an initiatory order, because frankly, he had never been actually received any of the degree initiations or anything.
Oh, okay.
He was like an administrative,
right,
high degree administrative officer. And not that he wasn't a personal magician and a magician in his own right, but as far as the OTO was concerned, he had no experience with the degree end of it and that experience. So he had little respect for it. And he thought if Crowley's work is going to survive for the next 25 years or so, we're going to have to concentrate on keeping a few things published. And we're going to have to keep Crowley in the mind of the consciousness of humanity, and a few of his works out there, so that he concentrated on publishing more than, but the OTO degree initiations are absolutely mind-blowingly cool. Okay. And they do take the individual candidate. It's like the Masonic degrees on magical steroids.
Right.
And we know how successful the Masonic program has been for hundreds of years. And the OTO actually started as a Masonic academy in Europe before Crowley's days, because they sort of, the founding fathers sort of got the fact that, hey, this is a very cool program that we could actually supercharge, And but anyway, when Carl Germer died and Grady assumed the leadership of the OTO, he said, we're going to start initiating again. Okay, because the last few high degree members that still lived were just they were heartbroken that there was this period where they didn't initiate. And so there, the surviving members were just, supportive of this whole thing. So when Grady thought, what is the best thing we can pool our limited resources into. What project, what book, what can we do to literally bring Crowley back to life 20 years after his death? And the Beatles came out with Sgt. Pepper's, with Aleister Crowley on the cover, with the opening line, "It was 20 years ago today. Sgt. Pepper taught the band to play." Grady said, "Let's go to the Warburg Museum in London. Let's take photographs of those tarot cards. Let's publish that tarot deck as the opening salvo, okay, as the first germinated seed to plant back into human consciousness." And he viewed it from a very, very magical point of view. And it worked. Okay, that's how I got into the OTO. I went down to a local Pickwick bookstore in probably 1971 or 72. And I saw that box of tarot cards, the Thoth Tarot. I didn't know Crowley from Adam, but I wanted those cards. Those looked so cool. It had Rose Cross on the back and that OTO lamin that looked so cool and Masonically Gnostic and I wrote the address on that card, the post office box, and said, "Kindly communicate to me as you will." Well, that was too stupid for anybody to answer that one back. But anyway, that's how I eventually got into the OTO. It was 1975 before I actually took a bus up to Dublin, California, and got initiated in the garage temple of Grady McMurtry and his wife, then wife, Phyllis Seckler. And I thought, oh, there must be thousands of members and
all over the world.
All over the world with temples of golden doors but no, there was nobody at my initiation but Phyllis and Grady. I mean, they were the heavy hitters of magic in the universe, and I didn't know, I didn't know anything. And I asked where everybody else was, and they said, well, with the exception of Helen, and this is us. You're looking at it. I go, oh, really? And Grady said, yeah, as a matter of fact, if you want more, you're going to have to help us get this going. And which was an awesome privilege, actually. But anyway, and through Grady, that's when I met Israel Regardi. And Regardi and I stayed in touch for a long time too. And Regardi got the second annual Adam Weishaupt Illuminati Award. So that's why Bob's was the third.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Regardi seems like one of those folks that you might assume is just kind of a mild-mannered guy, and then you find out he's like the crazy grandpa. I don't know.
Well, he's like the crazy grandpa that you want to grow up to be just like.
Crazy in the best way, right?
God, yeah. He was really truly, he's the most charming ever met. Now, he had a slight English accent, but it wasn't posh. Okay, it was a slight. It wasn't quite Cockney, but it was It was kind of a working class twinge because he was raised in the United States. You know.
Okay.
Okay.
It had a certain stature to it in those recordings he made.
Yes. And so you immediately, well, just watch Masterpiece Theater on you know, if you have a British accent, you're automatically more intelligent than those who don't.
And we're intimidated by it as Americans for some reason.
Yeah, we are. But anyway, he's a very charming guy, but very, very funny. And I admired him most, and what I've taken away from his influence is that he was extremely knowledgeable, extremely experienced, had a wealth of adventurous, magical, mystical stories to tell. His tale hasn't been properly explored yet. And his relationship with Crowley, and the fact that Crowley was actually jealous of Regardie with his at least projected relationship with Crowley's wife, and their falling out, and the fact that for years and years it was so bitter. But then Regardie would actually be the one to later in life to look back and say, God, what a great man this nut was. This guy really was a prophet. You know, no wonder he was hard to get along with. Yeah, and but Regardie had years of letters of people that thought they were Crowley's incarnation, and I had not as many as he did, but because I had a pretty active, ongoing initiatory OTO body going on in Southern California, I got a lot of letters, at first snail mail letters from Crowley, you know, for incarnations of Crowley and stuff. And at our first meeting, the conversation, you know, went to, you know, I got all these letters, and he said, oh, I got all these letters too. And he says, look, let's put them together and publish them. And so I said, yeah, we could call it Liber Nuts, and NUTZ. And he said, great. And I've even got a note back from him saying, yes, we'll do Liber Nuts. And after he died, we were going through his storage area, and I found the file.
Oh, nice.
For Liber Nuts, and there was only about 4 things in it. And I looked all around for other things, because I know I'd sent him more than that, and I couldn't locate it. So Liber Nuts will always be one of those things that that might have been.
Unpublished, but near and dear to your heart.
Yes.
I've always imagined the folks at New Falcon could put together a book similar to that with all the proposals they've received over the years.
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely. And it was the New Falcon folks that were the Israel Regardie Foundation and things like that. So that's how all that
connected. Yeah. So you were close with, or you knew Regardie and all kinds of, quite a cast of characters, I guess. When I think of Kenneth Anger, and you spent time with Tim Leary.
Well, I didn't spend time with Tim Leary. I wish I did.
Okay.
We shared a hashish connection, in because he hung out a lot in Laguna Beach, and that was just the next town over. We were early hippies,
Mm-hmm.
and so the Brotherhood of Eternal Love, which was sort of I don't know what you would call them. They weren't a Leary cult, but in a way they were a Leary cult, and they weren't a drug cartel, but in a way they were a drug cartel, and they weren't adventurous terrorists who could break somebody out of a federal prison,
But yet,
and take them to Algeria, or, but they were.
but here we are.
Yeah. But I was in a band called Charlie D and Milo, and we recorded with CBS and or Epic Records and stuff. So we were a band working, and our violinist and bass player was very, very good friends with a guy that we only knew as Ben. And Ben was a world traveler. And I mean, a world traveler like Afghanistan and exotic world traveler. And he would come back with the best hashish on the planet.
Mm.
And I remember, and he would visit us because the band all lived in a house. Oh, I'm telling old hippie stories here.
It's great.
The band lived in a big house in Santa Ana Heights, and Ben would visit after one of these trips. And I remember once he had a sort of a thick plastic bag, and it was like a cylindrical thing. But in that cylindrical bag, there were discs of hashish about this big. What is that? 4 inches in diameter.
Yeah, 4 inches.
And they were stamped on the outside with some kind of Arabic, beautiful looking stamp, and that was sprinkled in gold dust.
Wow.
And he had a whole stack of those. Okay. And he was visiting the band, and he said, "Oh, these bottom two broke. You can have those."
It's a good friend to have.
He was a very good friend to have, and we felt so. We knew at the time that we were living in history.
Mm.
Okay, and it's the same thing sitting with Regardi, or sitting with McMurtry, or with Bob Wilson, or Kenneth Anger. It was one of those moments where you are sitting in history, and that you better be conscious of every nuance of what's going on, because you're in a cosmic moment.
Mm.
You're at a period in time that others would think is almost like a crack in time, when everything going forward from this point is dramatically different than it would have gone if it was not for this moment. Does that make any?
It does. What impresses me, or what's hitting me, is just how you said you were aware of it in the moment. Like it wasn't a hindsight thing, that it was like something real is happening here. And the phrase that comes to my mind is like, I'm surrounded by the frontier scouts for the species in this moment in time.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I might have lifted that from Leary or McKenna or something, but yeah, just those some heavy hitters were around there, in a certain. So you would have been in more of the south of LA side of town, and did you get involved with any of the happenings in Laurel Canyon in that area? That was
No,
interesting.
no, only in so much as the music connection
Right.
would take us. Our producer was at CBS or at Epic. The producer is a producer. He's not hooked up with the label. He could be with any label, okay. But Sunday Night was our first big producer at CBS, and a lot of people we met there at the CBS, because we recorded at CBS over there on Sunset, and one person that we met that attended one of our sessions was Terry Melcher, and Terry Melcher was Doris Day's son. Okay. And Terry Melcher, and this was at the time this was happening, Terry Melcher was the guy that Charles Manson wanted to impress with his music.
Mm.
And so there was this strange sort of LA hip vibration that us Orange County hippies and Orange County musicians were just too lazy to get in. We had no ambition.
The beach bum musicians, is that?
Yeah. And so we were too we were too stoned, I guess, to really get into the illusion of record record fame and fortune. And about that time, just prior to Manson, there was this other hippie scandal, loosely labeled the Boy in the Box episode. And oddly enough, here comes a Crowley connection, because the Boy in the Box situation was a renegade Crowley cult.
Oh, gosh.
That had burglarized Regarde's house, had burglarized the Sasha Germer's house, the widow of Carl Germer, had stolen the libraries of Regarde and
Wow.
Germer. They had the OTO's library, in other words, and they had it stored out in this house, barn way out in the desert. I think it's near Barstow, some ungodly place. And one of the children, and I met the man, I met the child actually years later, was just playing with matches and burned down the shed where all of the stolen stuff was, and damaged many kind of priceless things, Crowley's own robes, and oh geez.
Wow.
And so to punish the child, they put him in and to hear him talk, because I asked him directly, did they lock you up in a box? And no, they didn't lock me up. But I couldn't come in the house for 4 days, okay? And so I had to sit outside in the shade, and nobody would talk to me for 4 days. It was almost like go sit in a corner kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But a local minister came by the place, and they saw this kid.
Yeah.
He said, what are you doing here? He said, well, I can't go back in the house. Well, why not? Well, I set fire to the, well, you set fire to the, and they got busted. Okay. And they had to flee to Mexico. And it's just so, and that's why Grady McMurtry found out that Carl Germer had died, because these people had burglarized his widow's house, and nobody in the OTO, all of the old members knew that Carl had died. They didn't know he had died for almost 6 years.
Wow.
And they had to find out about it because of this boy in the box incident. That's when Grady came out to investigate. That's where he hooked up with Phyllis. That's where he married Phyllis. That's where the
Wow. What? Yeah. So Crowley didn't seem like a dummy. It's curious to me that he handed over his legacy to Germer, was it the administrator? It seems like that was not an accident. Do you think I don't know. It seemed like maybe he thought it was more important to get his works published than to continue the ritual traditions. Is that?
Yes, you got to remember that Crowley himself performed very few of the OTO initiations himself. The structure of the OTO degree system was mostly on paper. In Crowley's head and in his imagination, and it was all laid out in this Blue Equinox.
Right.
That was published pretty early. So even Crowley was more concerned about the literary assets that the OTO was responsible for than actually robing up and strutting around in the dark and getting people initiated. So Germer can't be too faulted for it. But the existing old ninth degree members were part of a very active OTO body in Los Angeles for years. A functioning OTO body is truly the only one on Earth. And they had supported Crowley throughout the war years and things like that. And that active lodge, Agape Lodge or Agape Lodge, in Los Angeles and then Pasadena, was led by Wilfred Smith, who was quite a character. And Wilfred Smith's wife was well, it was later run by Jack Parsons, the strange angel.
Right.
And Wilfred Smith married Jack Parsons' wife. Okay, everybody was exchanging affections.
It's quite the polyamorous thing going on.
Yeah, but anyway, so my initiators were Phyllis and Grady. Both came from the Agape Lodge. Starting at my first degree initiation, my initiator was also Helen Parsons Smith. So, and all of this, I'm just accidentally, I'm sorry.
Just stumbled into it.
Just stumbled in. I had no idea that I was stumbling into one after the other of the superstars of modern Crowley magic. And so Helen, for years, was a super good friend of our family, and well, anyway.
Well, did you get any? I'm curious about Parsons, and if you got any good stories about the Rocket Man.
I suppose I know a few. I never met Jack. We were alive at the same time for a while, but there's one interesting thing, and I don't know if it has anything to do with anything. Jack invented jet-powered takeoff, which doesn't sound very exciting now, but it was a super breakthrough in rocketry and development of solid rocket fuel and things like that. And he was I guess you would label him today sort of a freelance libertarian.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which in those days sort of leaned heavily on progressive thought. He wasn't a fascist libertarian, but more of a progressive thing. All sort of hooked up with Thelema, and do what thou wilt, and the liberty that Thelema brings to the individual, but at the same time socially aware and stuff. And because he was working with rockets and so were the Soviets, and and that a lot of the rocket technology after the war in the United States leaned heavily upon the German Werner von Braun and the ex-Nazi scientists. And Jack was over here on the other side, kind of the spectrum. He was constantly sort of under the eye of the FBI, which in those days was breathtakingly reactionary. And the day before he blew himself up, or he dropped a can of fulminated mercury. It wasn't suicide. He was literally planning to go on like a honeymoony kind of thing in Mexico. So he had everything to live for at the moment. But the day before he blew himself up, he was picked up in a limousine by Howard Hughes. Now, there's every reason not to think that there was anything weird, too weird, because Hughes was Hughes Aircraft. Jack Parsons was obviously on shaky ground as far as government work was going to be, just because J. Edgar Hoover just wanted to nail his ass for something. And so it makes sense that Howard Hughes would, being a Hughes Aircraft, would be interested in jet-powered takeoff, and having a scientist of Jack's caliber working for Hughes. And Helen didn't know, his wife, or his ex-wife, soon to be ex-wife or something, didn't know what the conversation was about. Nobody knows what the conversation was about. But it was a very, very colorful little footnote that probably opens up more questions than it answers. How and I don't think Howard Hughes went around murdering people or things like that.
No, but it seems, I believe he was retiring with this honeymoon or something. He was kind of riding off in the sunset, so to speak. So it's like, here's this loose end, this brilliant scientist that knows our cutting edge rocket technology, and he's going to be set free here. And he's got this colorful, whatever, occult background that we don't even know how to comprehend as FBI people. And it's easy to speculate they needed to tie up a loose end.
Yes, and it's almost impossible to ask oneself, gee, well, who would benefit the most from him exiting at this time? And it's pretty easy for me to see that. And of course, they gave him a crater on the moon after literally cold comfort.
And just such a gruesome death, to be honest. I mean, it was not a pretty thing, and he was discovered still alive and kind of blown apart. And
yeah, he was kind of half gone.
Yeah, maybe you have something more.
Oh, no.
Maybe we switch gears here. So with your Kabbalistic prowess, so the idea behind Lion of Light is that the Do What Thou Wilt essay in the book was what he referred to, what Bob Wilson in the 70s referred to as his short piece on Crowley, and that he was working on a book on Crowley, a full-length book that he was working title of Lion of Light. As far as we know, that book never happened, but we stole the title for this book. But my question would be, what's your interpretation when he calls Crowley Lion of Light? How might you interpret that?
First of all, if I had a Tree of Life, are we able to see this?
Sure, if you hold it up, we can.
Yeah. Okay.
This
is my tarot bag. Okay.
Got the Tree of Life embroidered on it.
Tree of Life. Okay. And each of these paths is, a level of consciousness, each of the circles or the sephira is the level of consciousness. And the paths that join the two are like conduits that either transform up the frequency or steps down the frequency of consciousness. It's a double, it's a two-way street, like current there. And if you're a Kundalini yogi person, you can see chakras on there and stuff. This is us. This is sort of our psychic circuitry. But with the Kabbalistic axiom again, that we're made in the image of deity, or we're microscopic, we're miniature working models of the big,
the bigger picture.
Yeah. So the path here that goes from number 4, that's over here, would be number 4, because I'm seeing it backwards. Number 4 to number 5,
right,
is the path of Tet, the Hebrew letter Tet, which means a serpent, but it's the serpent that's the tail of the lion of Leo.
Oh.
Okay. And it spans, it goes from the pillar of mercy to the pillar of severity.
Okay.
It's the cross right there. And it's the highest spanning of this conduit between 4 and 5. It's the highest one below this abyss here. So this is like the manifested actuality of what we would think of as the the macrocosm we can touch and feel and see and think about. And up here is just everything is still in potentiality. So that's the abyss. That's the looking glass between the ideal and the actual kind of thing. And the path of the lion is right there.
Goes across the whole thing, huh?
And Crowley's Crowley's rising sign was Leo, and he always identified himself with Leo. And even in his signature, you see the capital A is made with an elongated Leo.
Ah, yeah.
Leo sign. And that it is the path. Number 4 on the tree of life is what we would think of as the great father. Okay. Like Jupiter, the great father, the father God, the father figure that we can actually say, gee, there's a father with a penis, instead of, heavenly father, which,
beyond gender.
Don't want to think about your penis, heavenly father. And number 5, the great mother, but she's not mother lion. Okay, the severity. So there's the mercy of the father is number 4, and the severity and the mother instinct, nourishment but protective, of number 5. And the path of Leo steps up and down that current between those two things. And it's right before the next move up would be to cross the abyss, okay, which is a huge step. That's where you become a Buddha.
Okay? Right. That's the big one,
huh? So Crowley saw his incarnation as a prophet. Maybe not his incarnation as a student or a mountain climber, or his incarnation as a prophet that actually announces the word, that dictates the formula of an aeon, like Buddha's anatta, and triggered his incarnation as that prophet, was triggered by the activation of that path of Leo on the universal tree of life. So in other words, it was like this cosmic event happened in the universe, and I just happen to be the expression of that. I am that lion. I am the lion. The lion is the beast. And that was the meaning that John was trying to get across about the beast in the book of the Revelation of John. That's why the beast is a good guy and not a bad guy. It's the beast that is taking over from John's Savior's formula of the previous aeon to the new aeon. So Crowley is that beast, the lion of light.
Wow. Well, that exceeded my expectations. Thank you.
Oh, or maybe I'm wrong.
Well,
that's just my point of view.
I deeply appreciate your point of view. That's very profound there. And first, I want to check in and see if you have a little bit more time.
Oh, what do I got to do?
Well, I would love to ask you what the so to me, there's a paradigm shift in this new aeon. That's my assumption, I guess I would say. And I'm curious how you would define the shift, might define that paradigm shift. What's changed? What does Crowley and the new aeon bring to the table?
Self-identity.
Okay.
Yeah. And like in every aeon, the transition period is usually difficult and characterized by extreme polarization between those that haven't made the shift and those that have. And so there's usually natural resistance from those who haven't. And that is usually unpleasant and bloody.
Fair.
But it all sort of comes down to self-identity and the shift from if you want to use cosmic terms, the shift from your self-identity being one of a person walking on the face of the earth, dealing with things in a north, south, east, and west. Sun comes up, sun goes down. I'm on the earth. I'm a crawling creature on the earth. That's my identity. I bump into other crawling creatures on the earth. I subjugate them or am subjugated by them. I'm dealing with that. There's that's the old way of looking at things, and the new way of looking at things is no, I'm more like that sun out there. I'm on all the time. Okay. My other fellows aren't just creatures on the earth I'm fighting with. Okay. My other fellows are these other suns around here. They got whole satellites going around them. So do I, And the old way of looking at things is the sun goes up, the sun goes down, sun born, sun dies. even though I know it's not the case, I'm really still operating under the as if the sun is born and the sun dies. And I'm still operating on the assumption that, hey, I was born and I'm going to die. And if I'm going to live forever, I got to make some kind of deal somewhere. I've got to
negotiate.
Yeah, and if I have to believe stupid things to do that, okay, I'll do it. I'll plea bargain my way. And but the new way of looking at things is, no, wait a second. Sun doesn't go up, sun doesn't go down, sun stays on. Sun's there. Okay, that's like me. Okay, I don't understand why I'm currently aware, and that obviously there was a time before I was born, a time that after I was born, but I can't ever picture myself being off. I'm on all the time. The light switch goes on and on. Okay, there's sun stays on all the time. I stay on all the time. Night is an illusion. So death must be an illusion too. And I'm self-radiatingly confident enough in this observable phenomena in my little corner of the galaxy that I'm on all the time. If I'm on now, I've always been on. I'll always be on. On is on. And it's bigger than the meat tube I'm walking around in. That's the shift.
Wow.
And if it's just as simple as admitting, as a mother tucks her child in at night and says, don't be afraid of the dark, because the sun's still on. The sun's on all the time. We're just in our own shadow at the moment.
Wow. So that brings up just an image of kind of this old paradigm of the mundane world and maybe even just chop wood, carry water kind of thing, to this new paradigm of like a being of light, a spiritual being. That's lovely.
Well, yeah, a spiritual being who still has to chop wood and carry water.
You get both.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. On that note, well, this is maybe a whole nother podcast, but you had a book I found very intriguing, An Accidental Christ. And I found it like disappointing in the best way, in that I maybe had some hope that Jesus was this enlightened dude and he hooked up with Mary Magdalene, who was trained in mystery schools, and they purified each other's chakras and worked with light and energy and sex magic and all those wonderful things. And instead it's like just some trust fund dude from medical school that is pushed into being a politician.
Yes. Well, I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless.
It's delightful and it's demystifying.
Well, yeah, it was definitely meant to be that, and at the same time inspiring in its own way.
I haven't finished yet, so I'm working. It's getting inspiring. It's starting to really cook.
Well, the thing is, I'm not saying that there wasn't a character around whom many of the stories had grown. That wasn't this mystery school as a matter of fact, there's plenty of mystery school stuff in Accidental Christ. But and that Mary Magdalene may have been the leader of a band of mystical women, but there was something. Okay, there was something like that gave enough material for the myth makers of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th centuries to throw all of this together into a single story around which a universal religion could be invented.
Mm-hmm.
And it truly has everything to do with the expansion of the Roman Empire and roads and communication. Okay. In other words, we had television enough to make a propaganda to have a possibility of a universal religion.
Time was ripe.
And so that being said, the 4 Gospels themselves, because I don't even want to drag Paul into this. Paul was an asshole, okay? And Christianity as we know it today isn't really Christianity, it's Pollyanity. Mm-hmm. And Paul was a first-class nutcase. And so I just took the 4 Gospels that have been tweaked enough over the years to have enough matching narrative to give us this, what we would think is the gospel story of Jesus. Okay. And I thought, okay, this is what most people think the story is. And I think the story, just as presented in the Gospels, could have actually happened without any of this unnecessary, superstitious bullshit. Let's just say he was a guy. Okay, and now what do we know objectively about who his father was? I mean, Joseph, who his father was, who his mother, we know a lot. And they were filthy rich. They weren't a poor carpenters. Okay, and this is where you get your trust fund. But we also, they were not only rich, but they were aristocrats. Okay, they were nobility, and they went to great lengths to have their bloodline established to prove that Jesus was a direct descendant not only of Adam, okay, but of Solomon, of David, of Solomon. Okay. Now, whether those people existed in history or not, their genealogy was set up in the same way as the British royals or their okay, to prove political power, hereditary political power. And the situation in most of the front part of each of the 4 Gospels is talking about politics, the politics of Rome and Judea and Palestine. Okay, It's all in the days of Caesar Augustus. There came, okay. The whole thing is they were pissed off at a Roman occupation. And they had an Arab as their puppet king. Not even somebody who's even pretending to be a Davidian prince. Okay. But here we had two Davidian princes that the Gospels actually lay out who they are. John the Baptist, whose father was the high priest Zechariah. I mean, he may have eaten locusts, but the but the guy's family was well connected. The high priest of Israel, John the Baptist's father. John the Baptist is the first cousin of the son of Joseph and Mary.
Right.
Okay, and Mary's bloodline was just a tad pure, directed from her to King Saul, than was John the Baptist's mother. So that meant when Jesus was born, they said, "Oh, this kid's blood star is shining brighter than even John the Baptist was." And so if you read the Gospels the way they stand, and they're bullshit too. Okay, they're made up. Okay. But if you just read what they're saying and what they're not saying, you can see the whole thing lay out just kind of in perfect. Oh, I can see how, oh yeah, they'd bring him back. Oh yeah, they'd have to train him, just like Prince Charles would have to go to posh schools and things like that, getting ready for this eventual coup. When the time's right, they'll have the coup. We've got the perfect figurehead. We've got all of this other organization behind us. We just got to knock off a few people.
Start a revolution.
Yes, we've got the Proud Boy zealoters. So I thought, okay, nobody thought Jesus was anything until the miracle at the wedding of Cana. Have you gotten that far in the book yet?
Right, the water and the wine.
After that miracle, everybody, that's when they could say, he's out of the closet. I'm not only the king. That's why they called him King of the Jews, for Christ's sake. Not only am I king, but I'm a wonder-working king. I'm a miraculous king.
Okay. Right, special powers.
And I was in the shower one day, I don't know why I was thinking about this stuff, but I was in the shower one day, and I figured out exactly how he turned the water into wine. And I went back and I read the in the gospel what the sequence of events was, why his mother was there, why he and his disciples were there, and the fact that no, he didn't have just 12 disciples. In other places, they counted 144. Okay, and they all had to live someplace. He had to feed them. This was a full-blown moving ashram, a cult. Okay, and they all came to the wedding. They all came to the wedding. That would have tripled, quadrupled the wedding feast size. Okay, and the father of the bride or whoever had to pay for that, and they had to buy all this extra stuff, And this is exactly how he turned the water into, and I'm not going to give it away.
Yeah.
But that story was too good not to write down. I got out of the shower. I told Constance. I told everybody at Monday night class, and it was just too good not to write down. And so I wrote it down, but to set up the backstory, to set up the whole backstory about genealogy and everything else, it was too long for a short story.
Right.
So I started to look at other miracles too. I started to, okay. And that's how the thing expanded and expanded and expanded and expanded. So it's not a huge, long novel, but it's novel size now. And so I try to cover all the bases from birth to resurrection.
Yeah, it's entertaining, and the one thing that keeps sticking in my mind right now is this, like, the notion that Jesus spent like 10 years in the wilderness in his 20s and this and that. And it seemed like that was more John the Baptist, and he was maybe more of the crazy healer shaman type, so to speak. I don't know if that's accurate, but he had that feel to him to me.
I just have a feeling that John was far more important to the story than we're led to believe, and certainly the Freemasons agree with that. You know, we've got our Saints John.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, John the Baptist is very important, and he's important in my book too. So,
wow. Well, Lon, it's been a pleasure to talk to you here. I noticed you have a tarot course now at Jason Lou's Academy.
yeah, Magick Me, Jason Lou's Magick Me Academy. Yes, I've got God bless Jason. He's just so wonderful to work with. So yeah, just Google Magick Me and my name and tarot, and come up with a full-blown course. And yeah, it's what I'm doing in my old age.
Nice. Is that a passive thing? Are you actively involved in teaching that, or is it something you created that's been put online that just kind of
Oh
goes on its own?
no, I've got my face and voice in every.
Excellent. Well, I would say our podcasts on magic have been some of our most popular, and my story is that more and more people want to know how to do this thing, and I'm not terribly familiar with Jason's Academy, Magick.me, but what I've seen of it seems like it's a very modern place to go get magical instruction and find a
Yeah,
community and structure and things like that. So
yeah, absolutely. And he's got all sorts of different aspects uh, of it too. Yes, it's refreshing to see an adult.
the adult, and we found the adult in the room.
We found an adult in the room. He's a good, wonderful guy.
And so you've got that course online and with Jason and Magick.me, and I don't know how many books, but it's quite a few. 20 maybe?
Yeah, I think 20 is about it. And of course, I'm working on another one.
Can
But
you can you share what you're working on now?
it'll be a tarot related one, but it's coming at it from another point of view. Tarot, I've found over the years, is one of the most painless ways to get inoculated with the virus of Kabbala.
Mm.
And and I think Kabbala is pretty important, not because it teaches anything in and of itself, but it teaches you to think and be aware, to give yourself a language to explain things to yourself. Because we've all we can only learn from ourselves. Sorry. I got lots of books. I'd like you to read my books. I like you to buy my books. You can read them or not, but everything you eventually have to explain to yourself. And really no one else can do that. Other people can inform you or confuse you or stimulate you. But if you're going to learn something, eventually you teach yourself. And Kabbala, in its own way, once you sort of squirt the WD-40 of Kabbala in the machinery of your psyche, Kabbala starts to give you a language and a vocabulary to explain things to yourself. And the fastest way for us in the West anyway, to get instantly acquainted, just as soon as you crack open a deck of tarot cards, you're already playing with the Kabbala. And in the same way I showed you this thing, okay, you got 4 of these things, you got all of the tarot going for you. And if you've ever been in a position where you think you don't know very much about a particular subject, but that you bump into somebody that knows even less than you, okay, and they ask you such a fundamental question, that's such a good question, that you haven't even thought of it before. But because you know just a little bit more than they do about something, you start to explain it to them. And all of a sudden, there's another teacher. Okay, there's another teacher that comes in and starts putting things in your brain. Okay. Like a flying saucer comes over, and as you're trying to explain this to somebody, you find yourself explaining it to yourself for the very, very first time. And you're hearing it. You're hearing the answer to this profound, fundamental question, finally, and it's coming out of your own mouth. That's what Kabbala sort of sets you up to do.
I'm taking that in, and I want to throw something out there. I'm curious what you think. It's been my experience that there is this part of us, I'll call it our left brain, that needs to know why, that needs that explanation. And often it seems like it just needs that explanation so you can get it to shut up, so that it opens up maybe a deeper, more direct experience. Does that make sense to you?
Makes perfect sense to me.
Excellent.
And it's almost like what the Lion of Light. Okay.
Yeah, 4 to 5 there.
Well, it's the joint of those two, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere.
There we go. Well, on that note, we've got your books, we've got the class, you have your website, your Also a musician and performer, I believe. We haven't even touched on that, but
Well, another time, perhaps.
another time, perhaps. It's been a real pleasure, Lon. Thanks for your time. Thank you for your introduction to the book. And you were just down the street from me a few weeks ago. I live in Golden, where you had your OTO conference. And
Oh my gosh.
unfortunately, I was talking to Richard, and I wasn't able to connect with him because I was out of town when he was free. But literally 10 minutes from my house.
Oh wow. That's the first trip I've taken since I got back from Chile
Oh, wow.
just before the pandemic hit. And
Mm.
so I haven't been doing much traveling, but I've been keeping busy.
Busy. Well, again, thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure. And maybe we'll catch you again sometime.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
That concludes the episode. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. A big thank you to Lon Milo DuQuette for taking the time to talk. And thank you, as always, to Christina Pearson of the Robert Anton Wilson Trust and Richard Rassa of Hilaritas Press. Thank you to Rassa for producing today's episode. A special thank you to Ryan Reeves for 24 episodes, 2 years of service as our engineer and producer. We'll miss you working quietly behind the scenes every month to make this happen. Oberon Zell Ravenheart will be my guest on the next episode, releasing on the 23rd of October. Until then, I am your host, Mike Gathers, signing off with love and cheerfulness. Amor et Hilaritas. Hilaritas.